You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming back to the show this week and sharing a few minutes with me. This is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. And I am Mighty Blue, otherwise known in my normal life as Steve Adams, who is not in the least bit mighty. I've got some quite big news today. While this was scheduled to be my monthly episode while Ryan took a week off, it turns out you're all going to have to put up with only me going forward. Ryan wrote to me the other day to explain that he was unable to continue with the show. His work has been really piling up on him lately, and he needed to make some choices. Naturally, I'm sad to see him go, but he's definitely made the right choice for him. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad to be back on my microphone. The writing sabbatical didn't work out as well as I'd hoped, so coming back to the show full-time will stop me from berating myself for not having written more. Of course, I can't let this pass without humbly thanking Ryan for stepping in for me and doing so well in the months that he has been on the show. I think he's done really well, and judging by some of my emails, you all tend to agree. So thanks, Ryan. You were a lifesaver. The only downside is I don't have that many guests currently recorded, so I'm going to be scrambling over the next few days to bring some great interviews to you. Please write to me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com if you think there's someone out there who make a really good story, and I'll get in contact with them. And if you've got their contact details, so much the better. Luckily, today's guest, Steve Nota, was recorded back in March and actually scheduled for this week, so that has worked out well. Steve's a transplanted Bostonian. In fact, he's transplanted to Australia, and this week he shares his excitement about his upcoming AT hike in 2022, as well as talking about a couple of tracks, as the Aussies call them, in Australia. Steve will be on shortly. Then, Katie Westling shares her recent progress on her hike, as well as some of the lessons she's rapidly absorbing on the trail. Katie will be on after Steve. No book this week, as we finished Larry Luxembourg's Walking the Appalachian Trail. I do have a new one in mind, and I have been given permission to read it by the author, but I'm going to wait until I return from the JMT to start the book. But let's get on. This week, our guest is Steve Nota, or Dingo. Here's Steve. So this week, our guest is a Bostonian, transplanted to Australia, of all places. This is Steve Nota, or Dingo. Hey, Steve, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. And it's 6 o'clock. No, it's now 7 o'clock in the morning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's 7 o'clock in the evening over here. We were going to do it at 6 o'clock my time, but Steve said he needs a coffee in the morning, so we put it back an hour because the clocks changed in America and they didn't in Australia.
That's right.
They not changed in Australia or not?
WA doesn't like to change the clock, Steve. The farmers thinks it'll fade the curtains. Can't explain it.
By the way, WA is Western Australia, and Perth is the big city in Western Australia.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
Are you in Perth?
Yeah, I'm in Perth now. Back from Tasmania. Did a couple of trails just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those in a minute. And now, you were hoping to join the class, the AT class of 2021.
That's right.
But you've now decided to defer your through hike until 2022. Is that all about COVID and the restrictions, or are there other reasons you put it back?
It really does come down to COVID and the restrictions.
Because you've had quite an easy time of it. Well, not easy time, but Australia has done very well, hasn't it, in terms of COVID?
Western Australia has done remarkably well. Our premier, the governor of the state, he pretty much locked down the borders with the rest of Australia. So we have been pretty much mask-free since April. We just had a one week lockdown when one person got the symptoms. When we have people coming in from overseas, they're locked up for 2 weeks, and one of the guards got some symptoms, so they had a snap lockdown for a week. But aside from that, we have been remarkably free.
Now, with my schedule changing, this may not come out till after April 2021. Mm-hmm. Just so you know, everybody, he means April last year, 2020.
That's right.
Don't you?
That's very good. Yes, you're absolutely right, Steve. So the eastern states have had a little bit of a tougher go with it, Victoria especially. But we have been very, very fortunate here in Western Australia, to the point where last year, with the borders closed, I was able to walk the Bibbleman track over here in WA virtually by myself.
Wow, that must have been great. And I'm going to talk about both those hikes, because this is really the purpose of today's conversation, is to talk about the hikes Steve's done in Australia, and obviously his hopes and dreams for doing the AT. And we're going to come to that all in a minute. But the first real question is, what on earth is a Bostonian doing in Australia?
Well, that's a good question. Look, I'm a former military man. Spent some time in Australia in the mid-'80s. Was fortunate enough to meet the lovely woman who's my wife for 31 years. Brought her back to the States. We lived there for 15 years. I always told her when I finished my time in the service, I'd bring her back home. And after 15 years, she remembered. So here we are.
So how long have you been in Australia now then, Steve?
15 years now.
Oh, right. So after 15 years in the US, she thought it was time for 15 years over in Oz. Did you like it out there? I love it personally. I've been there lots of times.
Oh, it's a wonderful place. Wonderful place to raise kids. Wonderful place. Perth especially is a very, very relaxed city. Very happy with it. Traffic is minimal, and the sun it's virtually sunny every day of the year, so it's great.
Life's a bitch, eh?
Yes, life's a bitch.
So they say, yeah. And has hiking always played a part of your life, or because I seem to remember when we had our conversation before, you were a sailor for a lot of your life. You liked sailing. So when did the hiking thing start and end for you?
Up until 1975-ish, when I was living in Boston, I was a hiker as a young boy. I spent virtually all my summers in the woods, hiking the southern New Hampshire area, up to the presidential range, White Mountains, Mount Garfield, that sort of stuff.
Oh, right. So you knew of the AT. You knew of the AT back then. Yeah,
I did actually. One of my high school classmates actually did it one summer back in 1974. So Lord knows what it was like then.
Yeah, I'm sure it was much quieter. So you actually went on it and hiked around it. Do you have any ambitions at the time to want to do it longer term?
That got the seed planted, and I did. But I ended up going to the Naval Academy. So I spent 30 years in the Navy. So that kind of curtailed that opportunity. And then, of course, life happens. So working and all the rest, raising a family,
What does that mean? Come on, tell me, what does life happen? I know exactly what it means, by the
way. Yeah, for me,
life happens. Stuff gets in the way, doesn't it?
It does,
and yet you're going to meet people out there when you go next year who are in their 40s, who are in their 30s, who are in their 50s. And do you know what they've done? They've said, you know what? I want to do this more than I want to do my job currently. And they just go on up and leave. And I love that spirit. But your generation and mine, I'm 3 or 4 years older than you, 4 or 5 years older than you. And we didn't do that, did we?
No.
Life, when it happened to us, kind of happened to us. And this sort of thing didn't feel like it was available at that time, did it?
No, it didn't. It didn't. For some wacky reason, for me, I felt, that, my role was to make sure that the family was taken care of and the rest. And,
sure.
That's what I do. But now I've been able to retire at a relatively young age. And I know, as I recall, when we started talking, when I started listening to your podcasts,
sure.
You had that opportunity to walk the AT a million years ago. well, maybe not so long, but you know what I mean. What was it? You were class of 2016 originally? Or
2014.
14.
In fact, we're recording on the 22nd of March, I think. Yeah, is it 22nd of March? Which is 7 years to the day that I set out on the AT. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'd never hiked in my life at all. So you're right. You know, the opportunity suddenly comes and you choose to walk through that window, or you choose not to, don't you?
That's right. That's right.
What does your wife think about you doing this? Is she quite supportive of this?
Very. God bless her. She likes walking, so she'll go on day hikes with me. But the idea of spending more than a night in a tent, it does not appeal to her very much. So we'll do a lot of day hikes. She'll support me on weekends. You know, when I was doing the Bibbleman track, for instance, I had visits for a few times that were able to catch up. So I was able to slack pack a few weekend legs and things like that, which was great.
Enjoy that. Get used to that, by the way. Everybody tells you slack packing is not real. It is real. You've got to do it as much as you possibly can. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
It is, absolutely.
So she's on board. She now, have you got dual citizenship?
Oh yeah.
Right, so you can come back in the country whenever. You don't have to worry about 6 months visitor's visa or anything like that, do you?
Oh, heck no.
Oh, no, great. So you're perfect. So there's no logistical stuff for you then. So
absolutely not.
You originally intended, as we said, to do the AT this year, and for all sorts of reasons, you decided not to do it this year. So, but you still thought you'd do a warm up for your through hike, which, as I say, you intended to do this year.
Yeah.
You did this warm up last year, and it was the Bibbleman track, Bibbulman track.
MUN.
Right?
Yep, that's
MUN,
right.
Okay.
It's an Aboriginal word. So the marker is what they call a waigul, which is it's a yellow triangle with a snake on it. That's the waigul. And
there's way too many snakes in Australia, by the way.
There certainly are. Yes,
yeah, and is it eight of the most dangerous snakes? 8 of the 10 most dangerous snakes in the world are Australians,
and they're all over. Now, the happy part about it is that they're very timid, and if they hear you, I saw snakes. Fortunately, it was just the rear end of them. And that's just the way I like it. So just seeing the tail slithering away as quick as they could, that always made me happy. But I'll tell you, every time I saw that snake scamper away or slither away, my heart went racing.
They make you jump, don't they? I don't care how big and tough you think you are. They're going to make you jump.
They do.
Especially in Australia.
You don't get used to them, Steve. You don't get used to them.
No, I quite agree. So let's get some context here of what the hike is like in Australia. And I know Perth. Let's look at the map of Australia. Let's call it a circle. It's not, obviously. It's more rectangular. And Perth is in the bottom left-hand side on the Snowy River. I think it's the Snowy, isn't it?
Swan River.
Swan River. That's right. Not Swanee River. Swan River. And it's a beautiful, beautiful city. I've been there a couple of times, and I really enjoy being there. But there's no town or no city anywhere near Perth, is there? What's your nearest real big city?
Adelaide.
Which is how far away? Tell them.
Gee whiz, about 1,600 miles.
So you can't pop over to Adelaide of the night. That's right.
No.
So what is the interior of Australia like for a hiker? Is it really totally remote wilderness, or do roads still cross the trails?
There's a lot of fire roads, so there are access roads and such. So it depends on where you are. So the Bibbleman track goes south, so that's farm country. Some forestry goes on there, and the rest there are mines. So you do cross fire roads, access roads, things like that. If one was to go north of Perth, you would be, well, I know it's a G-rated film, so rather a podcast. So we'll just say it's the Great Australian Bugger-all, and you can do what you want with the bugger word to what they normally call it.
We're okay with that, yeah. Okay, so there's not a lot there then.
No. not much at all.
I think somebody once said you can fly a 747, as it was then, or 777, from Perth to Darwin in the north of Australia and not cross a single man-made object. Does that seem possible to you? Probably not now anymore.
No, that's right. You'll go across a lot of, there won't be substantial man-made projects. There are a lot of iron mines and the rest as you go up north through the Pilbara. But you don't cross much, and you certainly won't see many cities or anything like that.
Right. So is there a hiking ethos in Australia? Is it a big thing in Australia, or is it just a thing that just few people do?
Oh, heck no. There are a lot of, we call it bushwalking here. There are a lot of bushwalking clubs and all the rest.
All right. Cool.
And, you got a 1,000-kilometer track that, a lot of people do. It seems to be more subscribed from, when the borders are open. It seems that there are a lot more Europeans there, but I do know that there have been a number of folks from the States who have done the Bibbulmun track as well.
Right. So you started, it's about 20 kilometres away from Perth, isn't it? Was it called Kalamanda? Kalamanda. That is the start of the trek.
That's right.
And so what did that feel like? Was that your first long hike you'd done?
Yes. Yes, it was.
Tell me about it.
At first you're a bit apprehensive. Gee whiz, what am I undertaking and all the rest? But
it's good to be apprehensive when you're 63. It really is.
Yeah. But I had done a fair amount of of training beforehand. So this was it was really, for me, it was more about, do I want to spend 7 weeks, or in the case of the AT, 6 months.
In
the woods. So I said to myself, if I'm going to undertake the Appalachian Trail, I better make sure that I like this sort of thing.
Yeah, useful. Good to know. You don't have to fly all the way to America to find out it sucks and you give up on the first day. You don't fancy it on the first day. So what was it about that thing of being out there with your pack? And you're right, you should be nervous when you start, but at one point you have to take that first step, don't you? Yep. How did that feel that you were on the thing and did you get into a rhythm the way people do on I always talk about the rhythm of the AT. Did you find you got into rhythm on the Bibbulmun as well?
Absolutely. And to be honest, it seemed to happen from the get-go. But the only thing, the only thing that I'm still not good at is getting my stuff together in the morning.
You need to get over that quickly.
You do. I mean, I'm up, and I'm lucky if I get out of the camp by 2 hours after I'm up and out of my pack, out of my sleeping bag. So that's
guilty as charged, by the way. I was exactly the same.
I remember. Yeah, I mean, I've listened to your podcast a number of times, and you're right. You these are your older ones, and you talk about how you're always the last guy out of the campsite. Yes. It seems.
Whatever I did, yeah.
And I'm pretty notorious at doing the same, but that's my rhythm. It works out for me. I still end up, the 6-7 hours on the trail between huts or the nominated place where you're going to spend the night. And
that's what I want to ask you about that. So where did you? So there were actually huts along the trail in the same way that there are on the AT as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Are they based in a similar thing? 3-sided, or are they actually closed in? Okay.
There's only one enclosed hut, and that's an old fire spotter's hut on one of the few mountains, if you will, that one crosses on the Bibbulmun Trek. So that is enclosed. And thank God, I was in that hut the night that I really chucked it down. So it was very nice being inside a building when it's coming down like cats and dogs. Very comfortable indeed. But all the other nights, yes, it's a 3-sided hut. I'd say the condition of the huts and all the rest, compared to the AT, when I see descriptions or see photos of what some of the huts look like on the AT, the Bibbulmun track huts are a 3 or 4 star in
Oh, really?
comparison. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can forget any stars on there. I tell you. But you know what? That is part of the charm. And so, who maintains all these? Are these federally owned or government owned, or are they state owned? These huts?
They are state. They're not owned per se, but the local shires
maintained.
The local shires do some maintenance, but the Bible and Track Foundation does the bulk of the work on being trail angels, trail maintainers, and the rest. But what the state does is for the long drops, they're swapping out the trays, so they're keeping the outhouses clean. They do,
or privies, as we call them.
Privies, yeah.
Yes.
Or long drops. That's what we call them here.
Long drops,
Long
great
drop,
expression.
And they make sure that and there's water, and we have water tanks, rainwater collection tanks,
Nice.
and that really comes down because outside of the 3 or 4 month rainy season, you don't have a lot of water sources.
Sure.
So that's the downside of the Bibliman track compared to the AT, I think, where one doesn't have a lot of accessible water sources in between huts, or no guaranteed accessible water sources.
So you probably had to carry more water than you would otherwise do when you got on the AT. Then I should think.
Absolutely, I was carrying. Generally, I'd be leaving the hut with about 2.5 liters of water in my
that's
pack.
Quite a bit, yeah. And are there trail towns and resupply places? Well, how did you do that sort of thing?
So the first 200 kilometers
between about 120 miles, about 120
miles. Yeah, that's right. You're on your own. So think of it as the 100-mile wilderness, I guess. And there are no towns between Kalamunda and the first trail town called Westling.
Wow.
Now, you do cross 2 major highways.
Right.
So my wife, I'd meet her there. She would have a catch up and get resupplied, and off I'd go again. So you're able to get those 2 pickups there. And it's interesting. Early in the trail, the huts are about, not even 8 miles apart. And then as the trail continues on, they're about 14, 15 miles apart.
Because you're getting stronger and you can walk that many more miles, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. And the other part is because the first part of that, it's interesting. Kalamunda is in, call it the northern sector of Perth, and Dwelling Up is down to the south. And you virtually do an arc around the outskirts of Perth for that 200 kilometers. So it's very accessible for folks to use those huts, access via the fire roads and things like that. And it's that first 200 Ks is also probably some of the hillier parts of the trail itself. Australia is not a mountainous continent, unlike North America.
Sure.
So it's a relatively flat track for us.
But are there views? Is it interesting? Are there lots of animals to see? I mean, do you see kangaroos in the wild and things like that?
Yep. Yeah, you see kangaroos, echidnas, emus, lots of wild birds. And if you do I did my walk in the spring specifically because I knew it was going to be winter, so water access would be much more reliable. Sure. And the
spring for you,
flowers,
by the way, spring for you isn't the same as for us, is it? So is it October time?
That's right. So I did September.
You've got to remember these things. We're upside down. Or you're upside down.
We're upside down, whatever you want to say. So I did the walk September, October. I found that to be a very good time of year to go. It was cool at night. Nice. Got up to the mid-20s degrees C. So I guess that's mid-70s.
25 centigrade is 77 Fahrenheit. That's right.
There you go. So I found that a very comfortable temperature to be walking in. Imagine that.
Yes.
But I was still sweating my rear end off. But,
Of course you were, yeah.
yeah.
Did you stop every night at a shelter, or did you sometimes stop between shelters and just have a night by yourself, or were most of your nights in the shelters by yourself as well?
About 60% of my nights in the shelters were solo,
Wow.
and that's all because of COVID.
Oh, of course, yeah.
No other way to say it.
But if you've handled it, if West Australia's handled it so well, and 6 months after you had, you stopped wearing masks, you would have thought more people would have enjoyed that being out there. So you've found the solitude. You've found solitude. Did you enjoy that solitude, and when you go on the AT, are you looking for more people? What are you expecting on the AT?
Well, look, that's a good question, Steve. I did the Bibbleman track, and it was very unsubscribed, we'll say. And last week, I had the pleasure to walk the Overland track in Tasmania, and that was much busier. And to be honest, they only allow 25 people a day to start it.
All right, there's a limit. Okay.
There's a limit because it's high alpine for Australia. But it's fragile. It's fragile area. So they want to minimize the impact of humans around there and all the rest. And they want you to be in huts, just like on the Bibbleman track. They prefer you to be in huts because a lot of the track, the Overland track, is all national park, but that's more about keeping the fragile environment healthy. Whereas on the Bibbleman track, it's more about a fair whack of the track is on private land. So they prefer people to be in the huts instead of people camping out on someone's private land.
And apart from the numbers, were there distinct differences between the tracks as well? Was the overland track? Was it overland?
The overland track.
Overland track. Was the overland track? Was that more mountainous at all?
It was crazy mountainous.
Really?
And I think
no. Trust me, you haven't seen crazy mountainous yet.
Well, you're probably right. But for me, after doing the Bibbleman track, Cradle Mountain. I went up and down Cradle Mountain. I went through it. You're going through a boulder field to go over Cradle Mountain.
Oh, jeez. That's tough.
You're scrambling big boulders for about a kilometer of boulders, pretty much going straight up and down. And Mount Aussie the same. But what I told myself, and you've got extended portions of the track that are all roots, extended portions of the track that are roots and rocks, and it's very wet. Tasmania's it's in the Roaring 40s, so there's a lot of weather there. It's so green and lush, it's beautiful. And for me, I said this trail honestly was a primer for me to do the Appalachian Trail in comparison to the Bibbleman Trek.
That's what I was wondering. So you've got this feeling of the mountains. Which of the two did you prefer? I hope the answer is the second one in terms of preparation.
It was actually. Look, the Overland Track kicked my ass. There's no other way to say it. It was.
Don't you worry, mate.
It was a tough walk. And to be honest, there were times where I'm saying, wow, this is, I had done the Bibbleman track and I go, this is a walk in a park, no problem. And then I did the Overland track and I was like, yeah, now I know what people are talking about.
I'd like to give you a little bit of context.
Okay.
When in the notes I took of our conversation previously, you said the Overland track is 100 miles long. Okay.
Yep.
You got 22 of those to do next year.
It's actually 100 Ks long, so I've got even more.
Oh my gosh! Oh right! Oh dear! Well, you know what? You're going to expect your ass to get kicked in the first 60, 70, 80. In my case, 200 miles. So all that sort of stuff you'll get. And what struck me about recording today, funnily enough, I've seen that your goal to start next year is actually the 21st of March next year.
Yep.
So the 1 year countdown has already begun, hasn't it? What do you expect? What are you expecting of that AT hike? Are you expecting to learn something about yourself? I mean, what do you get from hiking, really?
Wow.
That's not necessarily the same question, actually. That's two separate questions, but really, people get something from hiking. Are you getting something? This is something for you that you want to do for some time now. Are you expecting almost a revelation?
Look, will I have an epiphany? Who the heck knows?
Yes.
A revelation, the epiphany, who the hell knows? What I do know is that it has been on my agenda for a long time. There is a calling that I have to go and do that trail.
Cool.
And that's from that. And like I said, that seed was planted, 50 years ago. So I find solace in the woods. And I do.
And do you need that, by the way? Do you need that?
Sometimes you do. I think we all do. Sometimes we need some time away.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's more about, you say the solace, the camaraderie. That's why I did enjoy the Overland Track, by the way, more than the Bibbleman Track. It was the camaraderie of the folks out there. You've said it before on some of your podcasts about, we're all here hoping to see everybody succeed.
Absolutely.
And it was a similar thing for me on the Overland Track. It's I guess you against the world. So you're challenging yourself. You're meeting some great people.
They're all your teammates. They're all your teammates.
Exactly. So for me, for instance, when I did the climb up Mount Aussie, which is the highest mountain in Tasmania, it's a similar rock field that you're walking through. I pulled my hip flexor about 4/5 of the way up the mountain. I could barely lift my right leg. It hurt like heck. And I said, well, either I go down hurting or I just continue going up and deal with the walk down. So I did. And so up and down, my leg hurt like hell. Got my pack on, got into the camp. I had some Motrin, vitamin I, vitamin M, but I was fortunate enough to have a couple of that. There were a couple of doctors, and they go, no, don't do that. Take this. Yep. These will work great. And yep, they did. So it brought perfect. So it was perfect, but it's that sort of thing. People are saying, oh yeah, do this stretching, do that stretching, take these meds. Yeah. And I was able to do the track. It was still tender, funny, but I was able to do it all.
Because you do so many miles, you get these injuries and we all get them. And you'd be surprised how you walk them off because something else hurts somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it takes the pain away because it's hurting somewhere else. So you think, I can't worry about that one about 10 minutes ago, so we'll worry about this one now. And has this recent hiking you've done, the Bibbleman and the Overland Track, has it informed you about what you're going to need in March next year in terms of gear, in terms of attitude, or did it sort of bring into focus what you needed, you think?
It did, and again, Steve, that was some of the reason why I've been doing these walks is to see just, in my head, I said, oh, I need this, I need that, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny how over time I've been tuning my gear up better.
Good.
The good part of the Bibbleman Track was I got a sense of what one needed for warm weather, we'll say, and I got a sense for cold weather for the Overland Track. The Overland Track, I took some extra heavier gear, weather-wise.
Well, you know what it's going to be like in Georgia in March next year. It's going to be bloody freezing.
Yeah, it will be. It will be.
Yeah, but you know what? So
especially
what?
For an Aussie.
For an Aussie, it's going to be a nightmare. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Especially for an Aussie.
I'm so pleased that we had a chat about this. I was hoping that you were going to be going this year, but you know what? I'm going to be around. I'm taking 6 months off, as you may know. Sort of taking 6 months off, but I'm still going to have a monthly show, and this will be one of those monthly shows.
Good.
But what I'd love is when you do come next year, contact me before you go. We'll check in on the show, make sure people know you're out there.
Okay.
And then as you progress, we'll talk to you every now and then, perhaps on that show, or you'll come back on the show at the end and tell us how you did it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How you did that 11? How you did that 22 times the Bibbleman, the Overland Trail?
Oh dear me, yeah. Tell me about it. Look, it's very exciting, Steve. And I guess you just struck it home when you said I'm on my 1 year countdown now. I didn't think of that, but you're right.
There's an app on your phone. You can put it with a countdown to a certain date, and it's compelling to look at it all day long. Let me tell you.
Oh God, I bet it would be too. Yes, absolutely. It's
okay.
Very exciting. So look, thanks for having me on, Steve.
No, thanks for coming on. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'll let you know when this comes out. But I appreciate you coming on and telling us your story.
Thanks, Steve, and
thanks, man.
Good luck with your time off. Enjoy it.
I appreciate it. I certainly will. Thanks a lot.
All
Cheers.
Right, okay, bye.
Bye. It's funny how that desire to hike the AT, and I guess any other long distance trail, kind of burns within you until you just have to do it. Steve's "life got in the way" is a familiar refrain from people who sometimes hide behind it to excuse their inaction. Of course, some people simply do have no choice to put their life on hold for 6 months, but when you do have that choice, that desire, that burn stays with you until you get the chance to walk underneath that arch at Amicalola or wherever any other trail starts, and you satisfy that burning desire. I think Steve has it, and I hope that we get the chance to talk with him next year out on the trail. Before we hear from Katie, I wanted to let you all know that I still have plans to start a Patreon account, but that I haven't prepared it yet and wasn't expecting to introduce it until my intended full-time return in October. But no kidding, this has just got to happen. The shows are costing more and more, and I need some more financial support. This week, Jessica Diaz and Betty McEnany continue their monthly support, so thank you, ladies, for that. I was listening the other day to a famous podcaster talking about value for value. And he was making the point that your listeners recognise the value you give them and they're prepared to give value back to you. This has happened with quite a few of our listeners, but I'm reaching out now to those of you who listen every week and don't return that value to me. If what I do here has any value to you at all, then please consider a donation now and become a patron when the Patreon site is up. Thanks so much for, at the very least, just thinking about it. Now, Katie is celebrating moving through 2 state borders. I'm pretty sure you can guess which states, but, well, a border's a border. Here she is. Well, we're back on with Katie. How are you, Katie?
Hey, Steve, I'm good.
And you're up a mountain somewhere, are you, or you're just on the trail again?
I tried to get to a high point, so I'm at a little bit of a high point. See how it works.
and I saw on Facebook recently that you've done West Virginia, not the largest state, and Maryland.
No.
But you recorded completing 2 states, which is a pretty cool thing to do. Did you?
Yeah.
Do you find that? And funny enough, and this is, I'm sure, one of the reasons for the Virginia blues. And I know you haven't done all of Virginia yet, but you're in Virginia so darn long. When you suddenly start, ticking off states, did you feel that sense of achievement when you got through the border through Maryland?
Well, to be honest, I kind of laughed because it was like, it really is so short. so it's fun to say I completed 2 states, but
it's also
West
true.
Virginia and Maryland.
It's also
really
true.
So yeah, it feels good. It's fun to be able to say I did those 2 states.
And joking aside, I remember going through Georgia and getting over the border in Georgia. It was so exciting. The thought that we'd walk through the state.
That was a big deal.
But of course you hadn't. You started North Georgia, so you're only about 80 miles from the border anyway. But even then, it still felt terrific to get through those states. So
yes.
I always hesitate to ask this question a little bit. How is the knee, and how are you feeling?
Knee is doing great. I feel great. I feel like I'm a different hiker than I was before.
Oh,
I feel like I am paying attention, to the knee and adjusting how I do things. I take a lot of breaks. My pace is a little different. I'm making sure I'm keeping my legs under me rather than big strides.
Interesting.
Those kind of things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So why did you develop that?
I just just trying to do research and talk to people about how to take care of my knee.
Right.
So, and it's working. And I, Northern Maryland, everybody says Maryland's such an easy state, but Northern Maryland is a ton of rock.
Yeah.
It is a lot. I mean,
you're
walking from one boulder to another on some parts.
I remember thinking in 2019, they must have shipped in a whole lot of new rocks here, because I don't remember Maryland being as tough as it was. Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like one day I made a bad decision and ended up not stopping at 9 miles, but going on 14 miles.
Oh, right.
And I ended up, those last 5 miles were a good part of walking through or across the top of these rock scrambles. And that was, anyway.
Yes, it's a bad time. Yeah, it's a bad time to do those. And at the end of the day, when you're getting tired already. Right. Yeah. But now, of course, you've got, you're into Pennsylvania now, aren't you?
Yes.
So, and interestingly, Pennsylvania gets a bad rap. Actually, mainly from me, to be fair, but it does get a bad rap. But it really is. I can't remember the number of miles. It's only it's about the last 100 miles where it gets particularly tough. I mean, the early parts of Pennsylvania aren't too bad at all, are they?
No. This is. I mean, it really is similar to just what I've been going through. With Northern Maryland. So haven't gone that far into it because I just started into Maryland today. I finished up, the other day, and then I had to get to a town down in Maryland to get a resupply that had been delayed by the mail. And so that was a logistical nightmare. But
tell us about that.
Anyway,
tell us about that, because people like to know these things. I think that's quite interesting how these things you plan so well don't necessarily work out. So tell us how that happened.
Sure. Well, you mail something with 2-day. What is it? 2-day priority.
Oh, yeah.
Does not mean it's going to be in there in 2 days.
Yeah, they'll think about it in 2 days.
It was about 5 days late, and on the tracking it just said processing error. It's like and nobody seemed concerned at all.
Yeah.
they just well, when it gets here we'll let you know.
So what do you do? What do you have to do?
So I was already in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, staying at a lovely, it's a B&B, but really also a hiker hostel, and nice. A former thru hiker from 19, an older man named Jaws, is the innkeeper there. And they shuttled me down to Maryland, 30 miles to get this package when it finally came in. So that was really nice. So, yeah.
You eventually got it.
Awesome.
I tell you what was a surprising innovation for me to see on the trail in 2019 was that people were using their Amazon Prime. So they'd literally a day and a half or a day before they went into a town, they'd all the stuff on Amazon Prime, and it was always there. They never missed out at all.
Yeah, right.
That's something worth thinking about.
And this was. If there's any way that I can do that, I will. This was like a medication that my daughter had to send to me. So it's like, all right, great. So anyway, so it's just, that's one of the difficult parts of hiking the trail. So you just go into it knowing it's going to you're going to have to deal with stuff like that. So,
but you know what? I think a lot of people have noted that, it teaches you to solve problems, doesn't it? Because there's very little, I love having, and I've probably said this before, I love having so few options when I'm on the trail, because, well, at the moment I can do whatever I like. I can get up, go and get some food, or I can go for a walk. I can do whatever I like. But when you're on the trail, you're kind of limited in the options you can do. So you have to address the problems as they arise. And I find it's surprisingly cathartic to be able to be on that trail and make those choices that, when they're limited choices, you make the best use of the choices that you have, don't you?
Right. Yeah. Left foot here, right foot there.
That'll do it. Yeah. And the other one is get up again, because there's no one going to come and help you up, even fall over. Yeah. So now I know you resumed. You resumed your walk now. You've been going now for a few more weeks, which is great. And you're carrying more weight. Have you settled down with the weight of your pack now?
Yeah, it's fully loaded right now with about 4 or 5 days worth of food. But you know what? I did some adjustments, and it really sits better. It feels good. So it doesn't feel quite so heavy. I think I had to adjust it a little more, so my hips were carrying more and shoulders were carrying less, and so that those adjustments really did help me.
So who told you to do that, by the way, Katie? Who told you to do that?
Well, I knew to do it. I just had forgotten to do it. You know that. You know how you know something, or you knew it like 20 years ago, and you stopped thinking about it.
Yeah, good lesson. Good lesson to learn, though, isn't it? You know, and somebody,
right, sure.
And what somebody once said to me, I'm not sure it was in an interview here, but somebody once said to me that he felt that he would readjust his pack every day, because it does slip a bit here and slips a bit there, and so I got into that habit as well, and it makes a lot of difference.
Yes, absolutely, because it settles. You know, everything inside starts to settle. You have to lash it a little tighter, a few miles in, and, then adjust the straps till it feels just right.
So are you comfortable with the weight now then? You comfortable with the weight now?
Oh, yeah. I expect it's around maybe 22 pounds.
That's great.
Still keeping it pretty light. And, so I feel pretty good about that.
Every pound makes a difference. It really does. So, So where are you now then? Are you just in it? Because I know you're about to meet up with some friends of the Hiking Radio Network, aren't you?
I am. I'm about 2 miles north of Mason-Dixon line now, and I'm just gonna I'm gonna hike a few days, and then toward the end of the week, a couple of your fans, Lisa and Audrey, are going to pick me up, and they said, we want to be your Pennsylvania Trail Angels.
There you go.
I just thought, oh boy. So I'm hoping to get some days of slack packing and try on some bigger miles, and
Yeah. So how
I can do that.
I don't think I've asked you about your shoes. And your other gear as well. Now you are putting some miles on them. How are your shoes holding up?
Oh, great. I have the Ultra Olympus, and they have really thick soles with a Vibram heel. And man, they cling to those rocks. It's like you can feel confident, that you're not going to slip. So, and you can't feel, those sharp edged rocks.
Yes.
Nope, I don't feel them.
Please listen. Trust me. You are going to soon feel them, because there are literally no places once you get into the rocks in Pennsylvania where you can put your feet without ripping your feet to shreds. So look forward to that. You need to look forward to that. So what about people? Are you still meeting people?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I have loved the people that I've met.
I thought you might.
1 week I met this father-son duo who I had met back in NOC, and hiked with them for a few days. And then, of course, everybody who I've hiked with, their pace is now quite faster than mine. They're covering more miles. Sure. But met a girl this past week, and we are sure that we were in the Smokies together, and just chatting and friendly. Her dad was out here hiking for 5 days from Montana, and they were just, and I'm also meeting flip-floppers who are starting out now from Harper's Ferry. So, you're meeting people who have over 1,000 miles under them, and then also, people who are still at that new, really enthusiastic and excited, stage of the hike. So it's a lot of fun. And
and people,
a lot of good people.
People travel at different speeds. I saw on Facebook this morning, the first one I've seen this year, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's not, somebody else has done it, but somebody wrote Appalachian Trail, 1st of March, 22nd June, in the books. No, that's right. Exactly. They've done the whole thing 3 and a bit months. Oh, my God. Nightmare. There's a whole bunch of them as well. So it was, it's one of those things that it's lovely the way people do move around you, isn't it? And you see different people at different times. They might take 2 or 3 days in town and so on. And then the other real phenomenon you're going to find when you get further up, you actually will start catching people because some of the people on the trail have adapted so well to this life. They don't want to leave it. They are good to go. They're good to stay here. You'll be surprised, I tell you. So you'll get that as well. So when are you meeting with Lisa and Audrey then?
Toward the end of the week. So well, I think it's like Friday. Okay. So they've been so adorable already. So
they're good people.
I'm really looking forward to meeting them.
That's great. That's great. Well, look, say hi to them from me, and although they're probably hearing us now anyway. So enjoy the rest of your day, and enjoy your hike, and just keep moving north.
All right.
All right.
All right. Steve, thanks a bunch.
Cheers. Then.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
I think that some of the lessons Katie has taken in are really profound. These are going to stay with her forever. There are actually things that I do now that I do as a direct result of my 2 long hikes. I'll tell you what they are, but as I always say, be careful what you wish for. So, I'm back to say this. I'll see you next week.